How long does he work again? I forget.
I think just the morning shifts. Then he gets off at around 2.
2 o'clock? That's not so bad. At least he's getting some work done. It was true when I said that, as I really did envy our friend Brendan for having a job even as he attended school. Sure, he worked at Dairy Queen, but money was money, and even I knew that it was smart to start earning it as soon as you could. But even so, I was a lazy bastard, I won't lie. My name is Carver Henderson, and the other guy that I was talking to was Eli Martinez. Slightly older by just a few months, as he was 17 and I was 16. Both of us were just kind of hanging around the Bay Area in the town we went to school in. Toledo, Texas. Just another small town without a whole lot to do, even when you're an adult. Seriously. Even I hear other people mention that there's still not much to do, other than just drive around, and even when you did, you've basically been everywhere. Got a dozen or so places to eat at, but I would only hit up a few that me and the guys would go to when we hung out. Anytime you were looking for entertainment or something to do, you'd pretty much be out of luck. Some would spin their wheels at the skate park, others would bike around, burning calories. Then you got some that would play soccer around the worn-down fields. This town would be considered dead if people weren't still half awake to get on with their daily lives. Don't even get me started about school. Classes were what you'd expect, boring and easy to pass. I mean, so long as you're not napping, and you still have a few brain cells, then you're pretty much okay. I got decent enough grades, although I knew I could do better. I just never put in my 100%. I think maybe around 60%. That wasn't to say everyone was like that. No. There were tons of other kids who got nothing but A's, but man, some of them were real pricks. I didn't want to be the guy who thought most of these jock-strapped assholes were supposed to be born stupid, that they were all brawn and no brain. I didn't really want to believe in the stereotypes. And if it wasn't the big roid rages causing mischief, then you'd be left to deal with these gangbanger wannabes or whatever the hell they are. You probably know what I'm talking about. You know, the ones who talk all streetwise that really make you want to shake your head at them if you knew any better. At first, I thought they were speaking a whole other language, but nope. This was apparently how us teens were supposed to talk. Yeah, no, I'm good. If I wanted to be some mindless moron, then I'd rather go bang my head against the wall. I mean, why would I really want to do any of that? Just to fit in? And apparently to do that, you gotta be practically inhaling bags of weed. That, or you snort fat piles of coke. Or maybe just be some sloppy drunk who thinks it's cool to parade around like a jackass. Hey, I'm not hateful. I just don't have to be a part of the pack. Or as I would like to say, the clique. You ever say that word and people these days will laugh at you for being a dinosaur? Oh well, excuse the hell out of me for using an actual word from the dictionary and not the urban one. You want to be hip? Then leave your brain at the door. How bad is it that a 16-year-old knows that our generation pretty much consists of twits? Well, I'll let you think about that. But in truth, no one's perfect. That goes for me too. I say as long as you don't act like an ass, then all's gonna be good. And if you don't, hey, your problem. I admit, my way of thinking back then, my beliefs, they weren't far from the truth. But it came at a price. I guess it was my faith in others. Still, it's not like I had a distrust for everyone. There was Eli after all, and Brandon, and another guy named Rios. We were all Hispanic, but damn, if I didn't know a single lick of Spanish. You could say I was bleached out. Hey, I was adopted. What can you do? Oh, man. If you couldn't find time to crack a chuckle somewhere in the day, then your mood would only worsen, let me tell you. I did not have a bad life, no sir. I mean, how could I? I had friends, family, and I was young and I was just having fun. What more could you ask for? School had ended for the day, and that's why me and Eli were there at the bay. With a cherry Coke in hand, I leaned against the railing, staring off into the waters. Sun was still around, as it only had been about half an hour since classes were over. See, us two were talking about getting Brendan along for hanging out. Most of his time he was spent working, like I said. I envied him for being able to get some dough rolling. Someone's gotta. But we knew he was just as eager to kick back and join us. Him and Rios. For Rios' case, though, he had the responsibility of babysitting his siblings when his folks were out of town. One thing you gotta know about us was that we all understood perfectly. Got a reason to stay back? Hey man, we ain't gonna give you a hard time about it. We're friends, not fuckheads. I've known these guys since 5th grade, so I had their back as they did mine. You just don't forget where your loyalty and gratitude lies. Because if you did, then you'd really be making a big mistake. And I think we've all had enough of those.
What do you feel like doing this weekend? It just depends on what time Brendan and Rios are doing.
Right.
I'm sure we'll think of something.
Like most friends, it wasn't any surprise that we always did our best to schedule a time to meet in town, with me usually picking everyone up. Everyone else didn't seem to have their licenses yet, but I really didn't mind being the main driver. Gave me the perks of choosing the road music. I always pick the good songs, not that rap junk that's all about drugs, rivals, and God knows what. I prefer the classics, like Bob Seger, Aerosmith, Bryan Adams, Huey Lewis and the News. Oh man, Huey Lewis and the News. If only more people like me knew about them. I mean, people my age. These days, I ever so rarely find some songs that I like outside the genre of good old rock and roll. Nickelback is still a favorite of mine. Oh, and Theory, and the 1975, and I actually started getting into David Duchovny's music. You may remember him for being famously known as Fox Mulder from the X-Files series. Now that was an awesome show, and you can't tell me any different. Guy can really sing. And I seriously digged his second album, Every Third Thought. Oh God, there wasn't a song in there that I didn't like. I'd listen to them in bed, in the car, or especially when I was just off staring at clouds. I can't say I have a favorite song from that album, but the ones I really found myself listening to the most were Every Third Thought, of course, Half-Life, and especially Stranger in the Sacred Heart. I didn't mean to digress.
Oh, fuck. I forgot. I gotta pick up some stuff for dinner. Hey, I'll talk to you later, man.
No sweat. But fuck, man, you forget shit so much.
Hey, man, it happens.
Eli was not dumb. Not by any means. He was just absent-minded was all. I didn't have any room to talk, since I was pretty scatterbrained in my own way. It still was funny to poke at, though. After sharing a laugh, we hopped back into my car and drove through the neighborhood before reaching a Lowe's supermarket. Instead of having to wait for him to get his groceries, he said his mother would pick him up. I asked again if he was sure, and he told me he was positive. So we said our goodbyes before we walked away and into the front doors. I hadn't immediately left the parking lot quite yet, as I was scrolling through my phone, searching for some songs to put on shuffle before I get on to driving again. I was in no hurry to get home, as Dad happened to text me back at the bay that I was gonna come home late anyways. Not to mention, I didn't have any homework. And to top it all off, it was Friday night, which was sweet. By then, I decided to just drive on over back to the bay. You could say it was one of our main hangout spots, and for good reason too, as it was always dandy to relax near the water, hearing the waves crash and that sun warming your face. In Texas, the sun wasn't always the enemy when it came to breaking a sweat. Nah, that'd be the humidity, and man was it a bitch. Still didn't stop me from wearing my stylish black leather jacket. Usually, I'd rely on there being a nice breeze to help it make it tolerable to don my coat, and it helped most of the time. Still, it's not like I really got drenched like some other poor bastards. It didn't matter if you were skinny or fat, people would sweat, simple as that. Thankfully, I had the fortune of having the wind come on by and cool me off. Feeling it course in my hair was nice, even if I did have to comb it later, which I had always kept one in my back pocket. People usually found it funny that I was the only person to comb my hair at school, even calling me a greaser from the 50s for my fashion sense and characteristics. I liked that real nicely. Even though I didn't drive muscle cars or put pomade in my hair, oh god, I hated that crap. That and gel. I had a bad experience with it, as it only ruined my hair. Oh man, I don't even want to think about it. I preferred to be all natural instead of having some weird gunk inside my hair. So yeah, people usually like to make some jokes about me and my looks. Not that I gave a rat's ass. It's like James Dean once said, live fast and die young, so you can leave a good-looking corpse in the grave. You gotta respect the man. Walking in the sand with my jacket off, I had it over my shoulder as I kept on with my journey. Ain't no better way to put it like that. At one point, in the midst of my travel, I noticed some people were fishing up there at the docks. Heck, some were younglings, being taught by their older kin. Good for them. Wasn't so long after that, I had sat down on a bench in front of the same railing from earlier, using my jacket to cover the front of my body like a blanket. Folks would pass on by, some with their children or maybe with their dogs. It was nice outside, which came off as no surprise since others were playing basketball at the court close by, or they were just relaxing on the unoccupied grass. See, it was moments like these in which a lot of people missed out on. Usually, that's because of the electronic devices we have, and the streaming platforms that go on it. Netflix, YouTube, Instagram, all that distraction keeps us from really taking the time to appreciate the little things. I may not have always used my head when it came to taking tests or doing assignments, but I really was a thinker. I would think, and think all day when it came to something I found interesting. Never was there a day in my life that I wasn't daydreaming. Sometimes, I'd find myself else entirely different. Like sometimes I'll be out of bed, and suddenly, I'm there thinking on the couch. You know, usually in those deep thoughts, I start to feel all warm and drowsy just because I'm way laxed. If you don't find me outside walking around for no particular reason, you'll find me napping with my headphones on. Whenever my eyes close, I just feel so light. believe that wind made the experience even more surreal. Wasn't sure how long I was out for. When I came to, I had jolted from feeling my head dip back, leaning upright as I looked around. Rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, I yawned loudly, noting it was quite dark already. Must have been a badass power nap, I'll tell ya. No other soul was seen, just me, underneath a lamppost, inside the circular orange glow. All that really accompanied me was the same breeze hours from before. Stretching my joints, I had slipped my black leather jacket on, popping the collar as it was tradition. Normally, I don't wear a watch, as it'd only get in the way underneath the leather. So instead, I only fished out my phone from the pockets of my jeans, and I came upon the realization just how late it really was. It was already nearing 7:57.
Holy shit. Wonder if Dad's back.
Having said that to no one in particular, I had begun walking back on over to my car, remembering the keys were tucked safely in the pocket of my black t-shirt. In my mind, I couldn't help but snicker at the thought of people passing by my unconscious body, wondering what the hell I was doing. I got a good laugh out of that, as I was only a few meters away from my car. It was at that exact moment I had just pulled out my keys that I noticed something. From across the driver's side, where I stood, I could hear sirens. At first, I had trouble deciphering which emergency services it belonged to. But after seeing 3 police cars drive like hell from up the street, I didn't have to keep wondering. Now see, this was an oddity to witness, especially in a sleepy town like this. I mean, the closest to crime you really had here was when some smartass thought he can get clean with speeding in the neighborhood. But this was something major. Question was, what exactly had happened? A shootout? Maybe a riot? Okay, first one maybe. The second one was kind of stupid to even think about. I sure hoped it would be resolved. Peacefully, that is. Last thing anyone needed was just to have someone lose their life during the night. That would be both heartbreaking and terrifying. We all know why. To meet your maker in the dark had been a fear that's lived on since man was born. Whereas in the daytime, you'd have the chance to at least stare off into the baby blue skies and think, heaven ain't looking so bad after all.
What we fail to comprehend, to expect, is hidden in darkness. We're led to be confused, then angry for what we cannot understand, for the fact that it's happening to us when we wish it didn't. But that which is shown in the light isn't so terrifying to encounter once you see it in all of its form. No matter how big, no matter how deadly, to understand it more gives you an advantage. I had actually given a prayer to whoever was in trouble, that no one else would get hurt in the process. I do care for others, even though I may not always find most tolerable. School ruins that for you. It wasn't so long after that. I had already gotten on the road, heading straight for home. Seemed like no one else was driving that night. Guess they were already home, unlike my old man. He sure does work his ass off, and that's why he was able to support us. He was a service guy for an air conditioning company, and that's pretty much all I knew. I never got too much into it.
I wasn't spoiled by any means. Well, not after I grew up, though. My mom and dad loved me dearly, so maybe they did present me more gifts than I really needed. But it's just me and dad now. Mom passed away when I was 14 after spring break, and during spring break, Pops and I spent it visiting her every single day. Kidneys were failing, and her eyes were practically jaundiced. That had always been one of the saddest moments I ever experienced. Before she had came down with a sickness, she had crystal blue eyes, beautiful before sickness had taken her. For some reason, I never really understood what it was that took her. I had never asked Dad a second time, since I didn't want him to have to remember. It wasn't fair. It just wasn't. For all of my life, she seemed healthy, happy. In fact, it almost seemed unreal. Like I could never believe there to be anyone else in the world to be this blessed. That's what she always used to tell me, that she was blessed to have me as a son. And that's where my thoughts had taken me. I was lying on the couch, toying with the TV remote against my chin. I don't even remember pulling up in the driveway or getting out. I swear to God, I've basically been sleepwalking my entire life. Not literally, as in throughout the night. I mean, I just don't pay attention too much when my head is somewhere else. My eyes glanced over to the portrait hanging to the right of the bookcase, just beside the TV. It was of my mother, when she was still healthy and happy. The photo really captured it. Her luscious blonde hair that reached her shoulder as she propped her chin onto the back of her hand, sitting on the living room bench as it was her own private domain. Not really, since I usually found myself sitting next to her when I wasn't playing some games or reading a book. We would hug, and she told me she loved me, as I did the same. Back then, I was quite the hugger, and so was she. Especially as a toddler, she and I would take naps together. Usually she'd finish a book, and then doze off with me. My love for reading came from her. I'm glad I have her in my life, and I still do. Doesn't matter if she passed away or not. The memories in which I hold of her will always be inside me, so she really never left. Not unless those memories die out. Her and Dad both have raised me great, and I didn't want to ever shame them. That's just something you don't ever do. Ever. Now Pops and I hang in together as a team. We have been doing that for a while. But more than that, he's my best friend. He really was. And don't give me that bullcrap saying that just because he's your foster dad. No. My real dad, thank you. Just because he's my dad doesn't mean he can't be my best friend. I wiped my eyes as I sniffled, getting a little misty-eyed before I felt my stomach growl. After hopping off the couch, I decided I'd phone in an order for pizza. Granted, I could have stopped by the pizza place when I was still in town, but the thought never occurred.
Hello, Simple Sherman's Pizza. How can I help you?
Hi, yes, I'd like to place an order. Oh, and do you deliver by any chance? So as I was putting in my order, I couldn't help but wonder how late it would be when Dad would come back home. Chances were, he was probably dealing with some customers who had their AC blow a fuse. Or whatever made ACs crap out, I don't know.
Alrighty, will that be all?
Sure is. Oh, actually, can I have breadsticks? Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem at all. So, a large pizza with pepperoni, black olives, extra cheese, and breadsticks.
That'll do it. It all came down to $15 or so, and that would only take about 30 minutes. I told them I was in no rush, and just to take their time, since they were going out of their way to come out here in the countryside. Where Pops and I lived, it was just a small little area near some woods. Thick woods, to be specific. I can't even call it a community since there was only like 8 houses living here. After I'd hung up, I decided to scroll through Netflix and put on a show as I waited for my food to arrive. I'll tell you, it was always tricky finding something on there, or at least trying to find something that was good. And when you did, you'd stumble upon some other good movies or shows to watch, so you basically just can't make up your mind. Then you wonder, what exactly are you looking for? Did I want to watch an action movie? Just something with martial arts? Maybe another teen drama? It was tricky to find anything remotely as good as 13 Reasons Why. Hey, don't expect me to spoil anything, since that show is a gem. A gem, I tell ya. It could have been 5, maybe 10 minutes. You never really know unless you keep track. But throughout scrolling around, I could hear something coming from outside. I ceased clicking the down button, curious as I listened closely. Nothing. For a little while. Seemed like something was walking around outside. Maybe it was just some squirrels or maybe even a raccoon. I mean, where we were at, it's not as if it was uncommon, so I really didn't think much of it. I resumed searching. Finally, I found something good. Right as I was about to start the movie, I nearly dropped the remote. What the fuck? I said to myself. It must have been a deer. Had to. It took a while for my brain to logically deduce that was the case and not something else. I mean, really, what else could have caused it? Still, at night? Why did it always have to be at night? Daytime was a different story. I wouldn't have given two shits about it. You're probably thinking that I just left it at that and watched my movie. Yeah, you'd have thought, but I didn't. Curiosity is quite a powerful influence, whether you invited it in or not. I certainly couldn't shake it off either, not even the goosebumps that washed over my skin. Hesitantly, I had gone off the couch and slowly walked over to the kitchen. For some reason, even though the doors were locked, I felt like I had to be cautious. Like each step I took should have been quiet. But why? I was here and not out there in the dark. Whatever the reason, I didn't side against my gut instinct. So I kept on tiptoeing until I was in the back, looking outside through the window. I couldn't spot anything, as it literally was pitch black out there, thanks to the tall trees behind the backyard. I'm sure it would have been a little well illuminated outside if the moon could seep in through what cracks the branches didn't cover. No, that wasn't the case. I knew this much though. Anyone or anything that happened to be out there could definitely see me. Lights were on after all. The feeling of being exposed, even indoors, was quite real. The weight in which left on me was enough to keep me there, standing, waiting for something. And that's just what I kept on doing. Waiting. I guess it was nothing. I left out a breath of air that I didn't know I kept in for so long. Relief was slowly making its way inside me again, building courage along the way and enough to get me to return to the living room. The movie I had put on helped relax me after a while, getting into it as I had leaned over to the TV while sitting on the couch. Thankfully, no thoughts of the deer cry had resurfaced in my mind, not when I was too busy watching rednecks getting their asses handed to them by Patrick Swayze in a bar. Take a guess as to what I was watching. Go on. Try me. Needless to say, all was well, and I even got a text from Dad saying he was only 15 minutes away from home. I figured whenever I get the pizza that I would share it with him. I didn't want him to have to worry about what he was supposed to cook, and I didn't want him to go hungry either. It may have been Friday night, but I know how he loved going to bed early. Just then I could hear footsteps coming along the porch. Eagerly, I stood up. Pizza time. Yeah, I actually said that. Don't hate. I had gotten to the door, reaching out, grabbing a hold of the knob, twisting it. I was taken by surprise by the sudden ringing of my phone, just 2 seconds from opening the door. When I stepped back and took a look at my screen, I could hear feet marching to the right side of the porch. Yeah, you heard me right. I said marching. It was well executed, and where it led off to was into the grass. I knew this because I could hear the twigs and leaves crunch, proving it to be the case. This confused me. Was the delivery guy going to knock on the back door? Back to the phone, I saw it was Simple Sherman's pizza number. Wondering what was going on, I answered. Hello?
Hello, this is Simple Sherman's Pizza. Just wanted to let you know that we're running a little late due to attending other orders. We hope you can understand.
Wait. Did you say you were running late?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Are you sure? I mean, the person's outside. They're actually walking around. I think he's actually behind my house.
No, sir, our computer says she's still a little ways from your address. Is everything alright, sir?
I'm sure it is. But thanks for letting me know. Thank you. I didn't wait to hear their response before I hung up. They were running late. They weren't here yet. And I had already received Dad's last text before they even called. It wasn't him or the delivery person. So who was it outside my house? I had walked outside, stomping through the grass as I followed the direction I aimed my flashlight in. It couldn't have been a squirrel or any normal woodland critter that was small and around, casing the house. The footsteps were just way too heavy, and it didn't sound like anything that was on all fours. I've heard stories about break-ins, and although me and my dad never had the luxury of getting to experience one, I wasn't taking any chances. If you thought I only walked out there with a flashlight, you'd be dead wrong. In my other hand, I had carried my father's Taurus revolver, more specifically, the Judge. Dad had no problem of teaching me how to use firearms for self-defense purposes, and I've had plenty of time to practice shooting it. Just never thought I'd be practicing on something alive for a change. I had made sure to check each corner of the house, but nothing came about. I also made a note to keep the gun hidden behind my back, as I didn't want anyone to get the wrong idea if they passed on by. The last thing I needed was to have trouble with the law. It seemed like whoever it was that was just outside could have ventured out into the forest. Whether it was their plan to lure me in there or not, I was still going in. The moment I was covered by the trees, I brought up the revolver up and held it right above the flashlight, aiming, like most policemen do. I had seen enough horror movies to know what the likelihood of being gutted without protection was, so I knew better than to just show up unarmed. I wasn't going to let my fists do the talking either, even though I did take up boxing as a hobby. All there was to accompany me were the crickets and owls who couldn't have picked the worst time to make themselves known. The ambiance out there was just too loud for me to hear something approach me ahead of time. This allowed the enemy to easily get the drop on me if they could. That is, if they spotted me first. Guess we were just gonna have to play a game of cat and mouse. Well, come on out, Jerry. Here comes Tommy. Minutes passed without anything happening. Not once did I lower my guard, but that didn't mean I clenched up either. If my muscles were all tight, I'd have tired myself out quickly and be left exhausted. Now keep in mind, I also didn't feel like hot shit. This wasn't a movie, and I knew that. Still, you couldn't let fear get the best of you. You just couldn't. I spent too many years letting that happen, so I learned to accept the reality of life and death, to give hell to anything threatening me. They're on my property, so this was personal. Back then, I used to shake easily whenever I'd be out in these parts, holding a BB gun instead of the real thing, and at night too. Now I didn't, but I still had to maintain my composure. It was still a challenge, but I'd be damned if I let it win. Each step was taken wisely, and whenever it came time to halt and wait, I did just that, remembering to breathe so I didn't suffocate myself from anxiety. Breathing exercises helped with that. The wind helped keep my skin cool, although I was slowly beginning to shiver, but not from pressure. I was only clad in my shirt, jeans, and stealth boots. I knew better than to wear my jacket, as it'd only make it difficult to move my arms around. You had to be flexible, to adapt, to be ready. I had aimed my gun right in front of me, cocking the hammer back. My flashlight had exposed nothing that moved, except the tree branches rustling. It was that same fucking deer that made that sound. But I didn't have to ask myself if it was the culprit. No one should have. Still, I kept pushing forward.
Hey! Whoever's out there, quit fucking with me and get out!
I shouted in anger, my finger on the trigger and my ears doing their best to pick up on any other sounds. They hadn't deceived me. When I heard something running. For a second, I couldn't move, but the reality of something charging in my direction provided enough incentive to spin around, take aim, and fire. Just because I may have had a gun, I didn't anticipate staying there any longer. I was given quite the challenge of running away, faster than I ever had. Even though I was in boots, I hadn't cared much on how sore my feet would be afterwards. Branches and more branches would keep getting in my way as I had tried to shield my face from them. I would have felt some form of confidence that was long gone from whatever it was out there, but I couldn't. Not when I was too busy trying to escape. I had tripped somewhere in the process, landing face first into the grass out in one of the clearings of the forest. Although it was rough, I had quickly dismissed it as I scrambled back onto my feet, kicking dirt as I resumed hauling ass. In these situations, your brain can barely take time to even process what's currently going on. But for me, my body knew all too well from the dangers prowling upon it. If only I had worked on my cardio more, I wouldn't have easily begun to get tired. No, I refused to get napped by whoever or whatever it was chasing me. I was not going to become a victim. Newfound stamina was given as I could see the lights of my house after passing the trees. My feet pushed beyond their limits as I grew closer and closer to the back door. Just a little more. Fuck. I was out of breath, but even so, I pushed my back against the door as I cocked the gun again. Silence followed. I did my best to pick up on any sounds once again, and not to pass out from feeling so anxious. from all the excitement. I wasn't sure how long I had stood there for. Sweat had run down my back from my little run, but I didn't care. Although I wondered if it did come from anxiety. My head had jerked towards the front door, and I had the urge to aim the gun in that direction. There was no way I was going to give up the gun so soon, so I had wiped my forehead and took a brief moment to catch my breath before I had begun to slowly walk to the front of the house. I didn't try to suppress the sound of my footsteps that walked upon the porcelain floor tiles, as I knew it would be out of vain. And the last thing I needed was to look like a dumbass. A set of knocks came from the door before a voice called out.
Hello? Mr. Carver? Are you home? Your food is here.
Halting in place right as I entered the hallway, I had to process what was going on. Sure, they may have called out, but even I had to do a double take. Looking down at the gun in my hand, I had suddenly felt a little sick, as I didn't want to be caught seen with it. This entire time, I had easily played myself into thinking someone was actually stalking my home. It would have been funny had it been someone else that it happened to, but not me. No, I felt like a fucking moron. Shaking my head in disbelief, I had begun walking to my father's room, but not before shouting,
Yeah, one moment, please.
to the delivery driver. After putting away the judge in its proper place, I walked over to the door. All of the turn of events that night had worn me down mentally. Nothing a good night's rest couldn't fix after supper. Unlocking the front door, I had become greeted with the face of a young, bright, and eager delivery girl. She must have been slightly older than me. Well, I say slightly, but in reality, she was probably 19 or even 20. I half expected to see the delivery girl wearing a cap with the restaurant's logo on it, but that hadn't been the case. Rather, the closest to that expectation was just a green polo shirt with a capital S and a pizza patch embroidered on it that she wore. Still, the most beautiful sight there had to be was a large pizza box she held out. Oh yeah, and it smelled great. Yeah, sorry for the wait. I was busy with something.
Oh, no problem. It happens.
It was good to meet someone who seemed genuinely patient. Not once did she give me the impression that she wore a mask on the surface to hide her annoyance. Thankfully, I made sure to keep a $20 bill handy in my back pocket as I handed it to her. Keep the change.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you could come out while you could. I was getting a little afraid of your dog.
I'm sorry, what?
Your dog. I mean, it's way bigger than any I've ever seen. Kinda scary with how it growled at me, no offense. What breed is it?
I don't have a dog. Where did you see it? She had pointed to the right side of my house, saying her goodbyes before hopping into her car as she pulled out of the driveway. I really didn't want to walk out, even if it was literally a few steps away. Although, I apparently had enough energy to put the pizza box on the couch before taking slow, agonizing steps out in the dark. Even though I was in charge of my body's movement, each time I put my foot down, it was nerve-wracking. As I rounded the corner, I could see there wasn't any dog or canine. No. But rather, there was an eerie and blunt piece of evidence, etched both in the mud and my brain. I wasn't prepared. There couldn't have been any stench to surround it. It was fresh and recent. How could I tell? Because the blood kept pouring out from the pores of the head of a decapitated deer.
Oh, fuck!
Before you ask, that wasn't what I was talking about that was etched in the mud. Instead, it was the footprint belonging to a wolf.